Hey, good morning, Jade. Can you confirm that you can hear me? Babble, 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 babble. Yay. All right, guys. So the test is again on topic 7, muscles of the upper extremity, arms. I'll turn it over to you guys if y'all have any questions or clarifications. Sure. Let me I'm gonna try to find some things on my phone and okay, so let's see, like that. So I have to remember I'm looking at a mirror image, so I need to look at it like you would be looking at it. So if we go left to right, you'd have scapula elevation. Gravity's trying to depress you. So you need to use those elevators working concentrically to make the elevation happen, and then eccentrically to let the depression happen. So then you'd say, okay, 310 taught me how to identify who's working because I need to understand why they're working. And 415 is going to help me identify who are the workers, who are my scapula elevators. So you have your upper trap, the elevation part of the trap. Some people identify them in terms of numbers. 1, 2, 3 is more across, 4 on the bottom. But we just say upper and lower because we already have that precedent with upper pec. Okay, so upper trap, you have your levated scapula, you have your rhomboids. Your rhomboids pull in a direction of elevation as well. So that's that one. Let me do another one where we can do a let's see. Okay, so how about we do like a pull down exercise? Okay. Now this is it's not really an illusion. So the machine, the cable is trying to make you do this, right? The cable working on the bar is trying to elevate and upwardly rotate your scapula, right? If you turned off all your muscles, so you need to use muscles that are pulling down, shoulder adductors, scapular downward rotators, scapular depressors. So again, 310 teaches you how to figure out who's working because of why they need to work, and 415 teaches you how to identify the workers themselves. So you just go to your circle and you say, well, who are my depressors? One's pulling down. Pec minor is pulling down, right? In fact, the pec minor is not only trying to pull in the direction of depression, it's trying to downwardly rotate the scapula, which we need as well. Lower trap is pulling down. Rhomboids and levator scapula is trying to downwardly rotate you because you need downward rotators as well. Pec minor in the front. Again, rhomboids, levator scapula in the back. So that's just a couple examples, but you can do that for protractors, like if you're doing an exercise where you're laying on your back with a weighted ball or a dumbbell and your protractors. So external force is trying to retract you, so you need your protractors, pec minor, serratus anterior. Okay, so I'm trying to get to all these questions. So Jade, I hope that answered your question for some examples. Jada, you're next. Could you go over the example where you have a hammer in your hand and you're doing pronation and supination? Yeah, we're just going to have to pretend though that this is the hammer, okay? So again, accentuate the hammerhead, the head that's very heavy, right? So if, oh, we just had an earthquake. If I'm here, I'm trying to put the camera for you guys to see. So if I'm here, the hammer is trying to supinate me, so I need pronators. I'm going to have some all the time pronators, pronator teres, pronator quadratus, and then I need to figure out if my brachioradialis can help. Well, I'm in quadrant 1 and I need pronators. It fits that criteria. If I'm in quadrant 1 and I need pronators, then yes, the brachioradialis can help. If I'm in quadrant 1 and I need supinators, then no, the brachioradialis can't push me this way. It can only pull me up to midway. If my hammer is here, now gravity is trying to pronate me. The brachioradialis is a supinator up to midway in quadrant 2. So I'm in quadrant 2. I need supinators. I'm going to have my all the time supinators, my biceps brachii, and of course the supinator muscle. And in this quadrant, yes, in this example, my brachioradialis can help me. So yeah. So in other words, you think about what it can and what it can't. In quadrant 1, the brachioradialis can be, well, it pulls in the direction of pronation to midway. So if I need pronators in quadrant 1, yes, it can help. If I need supinators in quadrant 1, no, it cannot. In quadrant 2, it pulls in the direction of supination to midway. If I need supinators in quadrant 2, then yes, the brachioradialis can help. If I need pronators in quadrant 2, then no, the supinator cannot help. And if I'm in midway, then all it could do is pull in the direction of flexion. It doesn't have any spirality to want to pull back. Okay. Oh, Armand, what a great question. Yeah, man, the deltoid is one muscle. So if you were doing anterior deltoid, that's one area of one muscle. So yeah, how many abductors? Supra, biceps brachii, long head has a component of pull, and the deltoid. It's one muscle, just like the trapezius is one muscle. The pectoralis major is one muscle. You know, we have different portions of the fan. So yeah, the anterior deltoid is not a separate muscle, and I try to emphasize that in the lecture where we on the circles. That's why the written material is a complement to my lecture, so that I could explain these things. For function, it's easy to separate them, but for understanding, you have to know that those are just portions of one muscle, and that's where I say you could connect them with a pencil or something to remind you that it's, you know, they're all part of the same muscle. They're just areas of a fan. Okay, the front of the house, the back of the house, the right side, the left side, part, you know, the front of the classroom. Classroom is one thing, but you have the front, the back, right, the left. Now this, baby. So you get the point. So it'd be 3 muscles. Okay, how the pec major is a midway muscle, absolutely. You're welcome, Armand. Thank you for the great question. So we have certain muscles in the body. My job is to introduce you to these concepts with a couple examples that I think are the easiest to understand. But you're gonna, when you go into grad school, you're gonna learn some, some freakier ones. The piriformis is one of the more freaky ones because it's just not clean. Like it's at a certain angle of hip flexion. It's not just perfectly like at 90 degrees or like where the pec major is. So again, think about this. Here's the conflict of interest: linear and rotational worlds. Tim, I had a whole lecture on up, down, left, right, front, back. The stuff that we're familiar with is not necessarily the same as spinny concepts, clockwise, counterclockwise. When you see a clock spinning, it's rotating the same way the whole time. However, the clock hand is going to my left and then up and then to my right and then down. And when you're running on a track, let's say track and field, you're running on a track, you're running in the same rotational direction the whole time, but yet sometimes you're going this way, sometimes you're going that way, sometimes you're going. So linearity changes with rotation. So the first thing I want to emphasize is that when we're talking about shoulder abduction, that's a rotational concept. Joint motions, for the most part, are generalistic. They have some components of rotation and some components of translation. When I bring my arm up, I'm taking mass and literally bringing it up. And I'm bringing it out and then bringing it back. Rotationally, though, I only rotated in one direction. But translation-wise, I went out and then back, okay? And if my shoulder would continue, then eventually it would go down. And so that's the first thing to understand here, that muscles don't care about translation. Muscles just pull. And the way the pec works and the way the pec pulls on the humerus, the pec is trying to pull the arm to the sternum. It has some clavicle stuff too, but basically towards kind of the midline, right? You love that word. When I'm here, I could pull towards the midline this way, but I could also pull the midline towards this way. But if I'm past 90 degrees, guess what? I can pull towards the midline this way. If I get past 90, the pec pulls the arm closer to my sternum. But guess what? This motion is called abduction. So translation-wise, it's a similar pull. Get over here, get over here, get over here. But from a rotation-wise, below 90 degrees, it's pulling in a direction of adduction. And past 90 degrees, it's pulling in a direction of abduction. So the linearity and the rotary can sometimes get confusing. But that's the trick. That below 90, adductor pull, past 90, abductor pull. Scapular plane, let me know if that answered that question. Scapular planes of motion. Rachel, for this class, we don't really look at scapular planes of motion. And the reason is because the scapula kind of lives in a combination of, so my hands are the scapula, okay? My scapula don't sit nice and pretty like this. My scapula, and they don't sit nice and pretty like this. They kind of sit at this angle on your thorax where when they do their thing, they're kind of in a combination of sagittal and frontal. Sagittal, frontal, scapula. Some people will refer to it as the scapular plane. But you know what that is? That's just a combination of sagittal and frontal in terms of scapula rotations when you have upward and downward rotation. So if you notice, I never, ever in class say, I'll do shoulders rotating in sagittal, frontal combination, but I'll never be like the scapula is. And that's why the axis of it actually is along the spine, which is super convenient. And as you rotate up, that center of mass actually kind of shifts along the spine of the scapula as you go down. So, so to answer your specific question, which is a great question, but it's a combination. It's a blending of sagittal and frontal. It's not its own separate dimension. It's just a combination. It's moving two knobs of etch a sketch at the same time. It's not here. It's not here. It's there. So elevation and depression, protraction, retraction, again, same concepts. If we're looking at the scapula and how it's floating, so think of it like this: apple, banana, strawberry, sledgehammer, which ones don't belong? Elbow joint, radial ulnar joint, wrist joint, glenohumeral, scapulothoracic articulation. It's not a joint. The way the scapula sits on the thorax. I mean, heck, you got muscles that live in between the scapula and the thorax. So we're looking at the scapula moving around. We don't give it typical joint type motions. There's a heck of a lot of translation happening. The true joint that's moving that scapula around is actually here, your sternoclavicular joint. So protraction and retraction would be mostly transverse plane, and elevation and depression would be mostly frontal. And then when you do upward and downward rotation, you get some combination stuff in there in its transverse. But you never hear me say scapula. You'll never hear me talk about planes and axes for scapula. The only time it has an actual plane is when we have upward and downward rotation emphasis. And again, that's in that combination of sagittal and frontal. But you'll never hear me ask those kind of questions because it's different. Because it's an articulation, it's not a joint. There's no J word for the scapulothoracic. It's not a scapulothoracic joint. It's a scapulothoracic float. So it doesn't get the same treatment as our other types of joints. Okay. Is everybody up to date on those questions and answers? Did I answer them to your liking, or do you want to ask a follow-up question to give me another go at it? Okay, good. I'm hoping this test will be a knockout for you guys. It's obviously it's different muscles, but it's the same kind of questions. You know, I'm going to ask you stretching concepts. As you flex, you stretch extensors. As you ulna deviate, you stretch radial deviators. Function stuff: flexor carpi ulnaris, wrist flexor, wrist ulna deviator. You know, in other words, everything, all the types of questions that I asked on the lower extremity is going to be on the upper extremity, just different muscles, different questions, but the same types of questions, same types. And then we'll do some applicability questions where I give you a few, you know, exercises, and then you use what you learn in 310 to figure out who's working by understanding why they're working. And then you use the concepts in 415 to understand who's working in terms of the individual workers. Sorry, identify the actual individual workers in that group. Is the picture, I don't know if my Wi-Fi is kind of spotty right now, but Am I super blurry to you guys? Like Bigfoot, you know, like when you see people taking pictures of Bigfoot in the wild, it's always blurry. Quality is, yay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, guys, do y'all have any other questions or clarifications? I know this is probably ad nauseum, but just don't forget eccentric, concentric, isometric, rest, death, muscles give function by their pull, right? Not what they cause or allow or prevent. Because again, I know I've used this several times, but just think about it. How would we ever give function to isometrics if there's no motion, right? So in other words, if I had a weight in my hand and I was holding it like this and there was no motion involved, how could you identify the wrist extensors as the agonists? Because you're like, well, wait, my textbook says that the extensor carpi radialis and extensor carpi ulnaris, their function is wrist extension. That's what the book says. The book says function wrist extension. There's some magic, some Harry Potter stuff going on, man. Answer me if you can. Does that make sense? Why function has to be direction of pull and not a motion? We don't associate muscles with motion because we will be wrong 2/3 of the time. Because the only time we're going to be right is if it's concentric work. We're going to be wrong if it's eccentric, and we're going to be wrong if it's isometric. You know why they do that in the book? Because it's easy. And maybe the people who wrote it quite don't understand biomechanics, but that's the way we should look at it, is direction of pull, not motion. Yay. I like seeing yeses. Yes, yes, yes. When y'all in grad school, y'all are gonna be teaching your peers these concepts because they are. And again, it's not. I've just seen it so many times. There are people that think that lowering yourself on a push-up works your back muscles, and raising yourself on the push-up works your front muscles. So there are people who think that doing a push-up works your back and your front. That's a perfect exercise because it works your back and your front. They don't know, bless their hearts, because all they're doing is seeing motion. They're like, well, this motion is like a row. I do that motion when I do the row. So they're like working the back, working the front, working the back, working the front. I'm like, oh, bless your hearts. Same external force, same agonist. The variations in the motion isn't because of different muscles. It's because the same muscles are doing different contractions. So again, if that person went to a book, just imagine if that person was curious and they're like, "Hey, I want to go see what muscles I'm using during a push-up," and they say, "Okay, well, the lat is responsible for extension. So when I'm doing extension, it's got to be the lat." You see where these problems? It drives me bonkers. So It's a big deal, man. It's muscles in motion. If I ever run for president, that's going to be on my ticket. They're going to be like, Brian Campbell running for president. What would you like to bestow upon the country in terms of tax plans and foreign policy? I'm like, look, I don't care about none of that. We need to have our country stop associating muscles with motion. That's the number one thing. All right, look, stimulus, schmimulus. No more muscles in motion. If you associate muscles with motion, you're gonna get a ticket, and you're gonna be. I'm gonna show you. It's gonna be legal to shame you online if you associate muscles with motion. Joke. I don't know what our cat is doing, but that can't be good. All right. Any other questions? Last call. Last call. Ooh, I got a thumbs up for this video. My boys, they watch all those YouTube influencers, and from my son's birthday, who he just had his 11th birthday, he wanted some unspeakable merch, and I'm like, what's an unspeakable, and what does merch mean? And so that meant like hats, t-shirts, merchandise. I'm learning. I'm old. Get off my lawn. So on those little videos, I watched one with him, and they're all like, smash that like button and subscribe, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. Like they're like hypnotizing. Like and subscribe. Kind of creepy. Mama Kitty, what you doing? All right, we're done. Okay, as always, 24-hour office hours. If I'm awake and I'm available, text me, and I'll be happy to help clarify anything you guys need. All right. All right, guys. Y'all be well. Probably gonna do well Wednesday. I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones that articulate my wrist joint. You're welcome, guys. Be well.